There are things men say that they believe sound loving, supportive, even noble. But when a woman hears them, she doesn't feel cherished. She feels uneasy. She feels the weight shift. You say it from a place of sincerity, from attachment, from wanting to be close. And yet, almost without warning, her tone changes. She pulls back. She becomes colder, less responsive, less present. And you're left confused, asking yourself the question that quietly haunts a lot of men. If women say they want closeness, honesty, and emotional connection, why do they retreat the moment you give it too fully? This isn't about censoring your feelings. It's about understanding what your words are signaling inside a woman's mind, and why some sentences quietly dismantle attraction the moment they're spoken. I want to be very clear about something before we go any further. The problem isn't your intention. Most men who say these things mean well. The issue is the psychological message your words send, whether you're aware of it or not. I'm speaking to you as a woman who understands both sides of this dynamic. What men mean and what women actually hear. If any part of this feels uncomfortably familiar already, hit the like button. And if you want to understand women before confusion quietly turns into regret, subscribe now. Number 1. You're my everything, and you complete me. Most men say this thinking it sounds romantic, devoted, deep. But when a woman hears it, something very different registers beneath the surface. What she hears is not love. What she hears is disappearance. In that moment, you're not presenting yourself as a grounded man choosing her from a full life. You're signaling that your sense of self has collapsed inward around her, that your identity is now orbiting her presence. And while that may feel like closeness to you, to her it feels like pressure. And pressure suffocates attraction. Here's the psychological truth most men never hear. Attraction does not grow between a whole man and a woman placed on a pedestal. Attraction exists between two complete individuals who choose each other without needing each other to exist. The moment your words imply that she is your center, your anchor, your missing piece, you are no longer standing on equal ground. You've stepped off your own axis. Women are not drawn to men who revolve. They are drawn to men who move. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. A man meets a woman he genuinely cares about. At first, he has his routines, his goals, his rhythm. He makes time for her, but his life still has structure, direction, gravity. And she feels that. She responds to it. Then slowly, his language shifts. Plans get rearranged, priorities get blurry. His energy starts following her mood. And one day, in a moment he believes is emotionally intimate, he says, "You're my everything," or "You complete me." What changes next is subtle, but it's real. She doesn't argue. She doesn't correct him. She doesn't even consciously decide anything. But something inside her relaxes in the wrong direction. Because now, instead of feeling like she's stepping into a man's world, she feels like she's being asked to become the world. And no woman wants that role. Not because she's cold, not because she's cruel, but because the female psyche is not wired to feel desire for someone who has surrendered their center. Desire requires polarity, and polarity dies the moment one person erases themselves to keep the other close. This is where men misunderstand women the most. They think respect comes from devotion. Women experience respect through self-possession. When you say she completes you, you are unintentionally admitting that without her, you are incomplete. And once that idea enters her mind, attraction begins to leak out. Not all at once, not dramatically, but consistently. Because now, every disagreement carries extra weight. Every distance feels dangerous. Every choice she makes feels like it defines you, and she can feel that responsibility pressing against her chest, even if she can't put words to it. Here's the truth most men need to hear, and very few are ready for. A woman does not want to be the center of your universe. She wants to be invited into a universe that already exists. She wants to feel your direction, your momentum, your grounded sense of self. Not because she wants less closeness, but because real closeness can only happen when you haven't erased yourself to create it. When a man says, "You're my everything," he thinks he's giving her love. What he's actually giving her is his balance, and attraction never survives that trade. Number 2, I don't know what I'd do without you. This line usually comes from fear, not manipulation, not weakness, but fear of loss. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. There is a critical distinction most men never learn to make. Appreciation is attractive. Dependency is heavy. When a woman hears, "I don't know what I'd do without you," she doesn't hear gratitude. She hears a transfer of responsibility. In that moment, you are no longer sharing connection. You are handing her the keys to your emotional stability. And the female nervous system reacts to that instantly. At first, she may feel touched, even flattered. But underneath that initial warmth, something far more destabilizing begins to form. Pressure, obligation. A subtle sense that her presence is now propping you up rather than meeting you on equal ground. Women do not lose attraction because a man cares. They lose attraction when they feel like they are carrying him. From a psychological standpoint, desire requires freedom. It requires the sense that you choose someone, not that you need them to function. The moment your words imply that your direction, your grounding, or your emotional survival depends on her staying, attraction starts to erode. Not because she's heartless, but because no one desires what they feel responsible for managing. Here's what's happening inside her mind, even if she never says it out loud. If she leaves, you collapse. If she disappoints you, you lose direction. If she pulls back, you destabilize. That is not romance. That is a silent contract she never agreed to sign. And the more emotionally aware a woman is, the faster she feels the weight of that contract pressing in. She begins to self-regulate around you. She chooses her words more carefully. She hesitates before expressing doubt or frustration, not because she wants to protect you, but because she doesn't want to become the emotional pillar holding your life together. This is where many men get confused. They believe closeness is built by showing how much a woman matters. In reality, closeness is built when a woman feels free to step toward you, not trapped into holding you up. The irony is sharp here. The men who say, "I don't know what I'd do without you," are often the same men who had stability, momentum, and clarity before they said it. And the moment they verbalize dependency, they begin to leak the very qualities that attracted her in the first place. Because now, instead of feeling your direction, she feels your attachment. Instead of sensing your grounded presence, she senses your need. And need, uncontained need, shifts the dynamic from desire to duty. This is the part that hurts, but it matters. Attraction doesn't die because you're vulnerable. It dies because you've placed your emotional survival in someone else's hands. A woman can admire a man who wants her. She cannot desire a man who needs her to function. And once that line is crossed, no amount of reassurance can reverse the shift, because the message has already been delivered. Number 3, I'll never hurt you. This is one of the most common promises men make, and one of the most damaging. It sounds honorable, protective, even noble. But psychologically, it's a trap you set for yourself the moment the words leave your mouth. Because no human being can keep that promise. Pain is inevitable in any real relationship. Misunderstandings happen. Tension happens. Disappointment happens. And the moment you promise perfection, you create a moral contract that cannot survive reality. Here's the part most men don't understand about female psychology. Women do not anchor to intentions. They anchor to words. When you say, "I'll never hurt you," she doesn't translate that emotionally as, "I care." She registers it as a standard, a fixed reference point, And once it's established, it becomes something your future actions are measured against, not consciously, instinctively. So when conflict eventually appears, and it always does, the disagreement is no longer just about what happened. It becomes about betrayal of a promise, about inconsistency, about trust being broken, even when the situation is complex and human. This is how men accidentally hand women emotional leverage without realizing it. The promise itself becomes the weapon. You forget the sentence the moment it's spoken. She remembers it the moment she feels hurt. And from that point on, every mistake carries double weight. Because now, you're not just imperfect, you're failing a vow you volunteered without being asked. Women don't respect men who try to be flawless. They respect men who are accountable. There is a massive difference. Accountability says, I will own my actions when I'm wrong. Perfection promises say, I will never be wrong. One creates safety. The other creates disappointment. What makes this especially dangerous is that men often say this line early, when emotions are high and reality hasn't tested anything yet. It feels safe to promise what hasn't been challenged. But relationships aren't built in calm moments. They're built in tension. And when tension arrives, the woman doesn't feel reassured by that promise anymore. She feels armed by it. This is why some men feel like past mistakes are never forgiven, never released, never fully resolved. Because the issue stopped being the action itself. It became evidence that you were never who you said you were. And that perception kills attraction quietly but permanently. Here's the upgrade most men never hear. Women don't want a man who swears he'll never hurt them. They want a man who can handle the moment he does. A man who doesn't hide, who doesn't collapse, who doesn't defend his ego. A man who can say, I messed up. I see it. I own it. And I'll correct it. That signals strength, stability, leadership. The moment you stop promising perfection and start demonstrating responsibility, the dynamic changes. Because now she's not holding you to an impossible ideal. She's watching how you move when reality applies pressure. And that's where respect is built. Number 4. You're too good for me. This sentence feels harmless, even humble. Many men believe it shows appreciation, putting her on a pedestal as a compliment. But psychologically, this is one of the fastest ways to collapse how a woman perceives your value. The moment you say she is above you, her mind doesn't respond with reassurance. It responds with recalibration. Human attraction is not built on charity. It is built on balance. And the second you verbally place yourself beneath her, the balance shifts in a way that is almost impossible to recover from. Here's what actually happens inside her head. When you say, you're too good for me, you are not praising her. You are disqualifying yourself. You are telling her explicitly that you do not belong where you stand. And once that idea enters her perception, she begins to see you through that lens. Not because she wants to, but because perception follows belief. Women don't decide attraction intellectually. They feel it. And that feeling is deeply connected to how they assess relative value. When a man positions himself as lesser, her instincts start asking uncomfortable questions. If he believes I'm above him, why doesn't he trust his own worth? What does he see in himself that I don't? And slowly, often without realizing it, she starts agreeing with the premise you introduced. This is where many men mistake humility for strength. Humility is quiet confidence. Self-disqualification is insecurity spoken out loud. A confident man doesn't need to lower himself to elevate a woman. He stands firmly in his value while choosing her. That distinction matters more than most men realize. Let me walk you through how this usually unfolds. At first, she may respond kindly. She may laugh it off. She might even say, "That's not true." But what she's really doing in that moment is correcting your words, not your belief. And beliefs don't disappear just because they're challenged once. From that point forward, your behavior subtly shifts to match what you said. You hesitate more. You defer more. You tolerate things you wouldn't have before. And she feels that shift immediately. Attraction doesn't survive when a man begins negotiating his place in the relationship, because desire requires certainty. And when you communicate uncertainty about your own worth, you force her into the role of evaluator. Not partner, not equal. Evaluator. And no woman wants to feel like she's dating someone she has to continuously reassure. Here's the part that stings, but it's important. The moment you stop believing in your own value, you teach her how to see you. And once that lesson is learned, it's rarely unlearned. This is why attraction often fades without a clear reason. Nothing dramatic happened. No betrayal, no argument. Just a slow erosion that began with a sentence meant to sound sweet. Remember this. A woman doesn't want a man who thinks she is too good for him. She wants a man who knows his worth and still chooses her. Because confidence doesn't need permission. And attraction doesn't grow where self-belief collapses. Number 5. Tell me what you want me to do. I'll always be here no matter what, and I'll do anything to make you happy. These 3 sentences come from the same place, and they lead to the same ending. They sound like devotion, loyalty, commitment. But psychologically, they signal the quiet collapse of leadership, boundaries, and self-respect. When a man constantly asks, "Tell me what you want me to do," he believes he's being attentive. In reality, he's outsourcing direction. He's communicating that he doesn't trust his own judgment, that he needs her to steer. Women do not want to steer men. They want to respond to a man who knows where he's going. Leadership in attraction is not about control. It's about orientation. It's about being grounded enough in your values, standards, and direction that she can relax into her feminine response instead of being forced into decision-making and emotional management. The moment you repeatedly ask her to tell you how to be, how to act, how to move, something critical breaks, because now she's no longer reacting to your presence, she's managing it, and management kills desire. The same dynamic appears when you say, "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." This sentence is often delivered as reassurance, but what it really communicates is unlimited access without consequence. You are telling her there is no line she can cross that would cost her your presence. And here is a truth most men don't want to face. Boundaries are not punishments. They are proof of self-respect. When a woman knows a man will never leave, never push back, never withdraw, regardless of how he's treated, her subconscious begins to test. Not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. She wants to know where the edges are. When there are no edges, respect dissolves, because respect requires limits. And then comes the most destructive sentence of all. "I'll do anything to make you happy." This is where everything collapses at once. With these words, you are announcing that her happiness outweighs your standards, your boundaries, and your integrity. You are signaling that you are willing to betray yourself in exchange for approval. That puts you in a submissive psychological position, whether you intend it or not. And desire cannot live there. Women do not feel safe with men who abandon themselves. They may feel comforted. They may feel powerful. But they do not feel attraction. Because attraction requires polarity, and polarity requires a man who stands for something even when it's uncomfortable. Here's how this typically ends. The man becomes more accommodating, more flexible, more forgiving than is healthy. He stops voicing discomfort, stops asserting needs, stops holding standards. And the woman, sensing this shift, begins to lose respect, not consciously, but viscerally. She becomes more distant, more irritable, less affectionate, and the man, confused by the change, doubles down on the very behavior causing the damage. More reassurance, more availability, more self-sacrifice, and attraction drains out completely. This is the point where many men feel blindsided. They say, "I did everything for her. I was always there. I tried to make her happy. And that's exactly the problem. You tried to earn attraction by erasing yourself. But attraction is not a reward for obedience. It's a response to strength, clarity, and boundaries. Women do not want a man who exists to please them. They want a man who knows who he is and invites them into his life without surrendering himself in the process. This is where everything we've talked about comes together. When you give up leadership, boundaries, and standards in the name of love, you don't become more desirable. You become invisible. And the most painful part? Most men don't realize what happened until it's already over. What you need to understand is this. None of the sentences we've talked about are dangerous because they come from emotion. They're dangerous because of the signal they send. Words don't just express how you feel. They communicate how you see yourself. And women are incredibly sensitive to that signal. When your language erases your identity, transfers your emotional stability, promises perfection, collapses your value, or sacrifices your boundaries, attraction doesn't fade because you weren't loving enough. It fades because you stopped standing in yourself. Love was never the problem. Self-abandonment was. Real attraction is not built on how much you give up. It's built on who you remain while you give. A woman doesn't connect to the parts of you that dissolve for her. She connects to the parts of you that are solid, grounded, and chosen, not surrendered. This is the shift most men need to make. Loving a woman does not mean making her your center. It means inviting her into a life that already has direction. It means caring without collapsing, committing without erasing, and standing firm without becoming cold. Here's the line I want you to remember, because it changes everything. Attraction doesn't grow from sacrifice. It grows from self-respect. If this video made you recognize something in your own past or your current relationship, hit subscribe. This channel is about helping you keep your emotional power without losing your ability to love. Leave a comment with the line you've said before that finally makes sense now. And share this with a man who's loving hard but losing himself in the process. Because the goal isn't to say less, it's to stand as more.